Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. If you can be seated, we're going to get started, please. Again, I'm M.R. Rangaswamy, the founder of Indiaspora, and a lot of you over the past 2 days have been asking me, who is Indiaspora, what is Indiaspora? So just a 1-minute brief on what Indiaspora does. We founded this 12 years ago. It's a network and an organization of the entire diaspora community. As Devesh Kapoor earlier mentioned, there are about 30 million diaspora who live outside of India. And we kind of represent some of the leaders in this community. So they're doctors, lawyers, VCs, academics, authors, scientists, and it's an inclusive community. It's a nonprofit, started in the United States to be a force for good. What does that mean? We got involved in philanthropy. For example, during COVID, we raised in 1 month $15 million for relief in India and in the US as well. We also still have an India Giving Day every year. It's an online day of giving. Last year, the Giving Day raised $1.4 million in 1 day of just putting your credit cards in. This year, Giving Day in March raised $5.5 million. And next year, we're aiming for it to be in the double digits, millions. So philanthropy is one area we focus on. The other area is nonprofit political engagement. We were originally responsible for getting Indian Americans to stand for office and run for office. And as you know, now in the US, there are 5 people in Congress of Indian origin, fondly called the Samosa Caucus, right? And we hope that will increase. Indiaspora, being a platform, acted as a catalyst. In the last election cycle, over 300 Indian Americans ran for office. Okay, city council, school board, mayor, Congress, governor. And so right now, the Indian Americans, one of the things we've done is to really put forth role models so that people can get into politics, into public service. For example, with every US administration over the past several decades, the number of people in the administration has increased dramatically. With now the Biden administration, there are over 150 Indians in the Biden administration in different, in the White House, confirmed and nominated positions, and so forth. So again, political and community engagement is one area we focus on. Philanthropy is another one. And the third area we focus on is really mentoring and really promoting the next generation. In fact, we're starting a new program called Diaspora Next for the children of people in this audience, right? A lot of us have talked about our kids growing up here, and we're forming an organization for the next generation called Diaspora Next. Stay tuned on that. Also, over time, Indiaspora is now a global organization. We have chapters in Canada, UK, Singapore, UAE, Australia, and we also have an office in India at this point. So if any of you need any more information, please go to indiaspora.org. We have, I think, the best newsletter in the business. We don't market anything. There are no ads, nothing. But if you want to just get all the news from the diaspora from all these countries and more, and from India, just go subscribe to our newsletter. So that's a brief blurb on Indiaspora. But here, I want to introduce my friend, Kailesh Satyarthi, Nobel laureate Kailesh Satyarthi. I'm on his board, and the work he's done is God's work. He has, ladies and gentlemen, over time, he, as you know, got the Nobel Peace Prize for being an activist in the child labor and child trafficking movement. And to date, he and his organization have physically rescued over 100,000 children. Okay. And he's put himself and his colleagues in harm's way. Some of his colleagues have actually been murdered trying to do the job. And so it's a very, very tough job that he has undertaken as his life journey. But besides that, before I actually have him come on stage, we'll play a short video that shares the work and shares why he's here, because his journey has gone from the symptom of child trafficking and child labor, which is caused by poverty and many other reasons, to his next evolution of his movement, which is a global compassion movement. But to set the stage, let's see a short video, and then we'll have Nobel laureate Kailesh Satyarthi, my dear friend, come up after the video.
The joys and freedom of millions of children started with just one feeling. What if the child slave Sabo was my daughter? Sabo, who was about to be sold to a brothel. Sabo, whose desperate father lay in a heap at my feet. Perhaps it all started with a spark of compassion, and today become a worldwide movement. I believe that each one of us is born with two natural gifts: consciousness and compassion. Both are the core reasons of our being. When we feel the suffering of others as our own suffering, with a strong drive to take action, that is compassion. God is not so meager that He has blessed us with only a little of compassion, which we have confined to our families and friends. We need to go beyond that. All that is required is to enlarge our circle of compassion. A touch of compassion is what makes each of us a problem solver, an innovator who is ready to accept all challenges and solve them. When we work towards making our world a better place, each one of us becomes a compassionate leader. In fact, all world religions and movements were born out of compassion. I stand with 8 billion people because the world is my family. In this age of interconnectedness, are we really connected with each other? Compassion is the greatest form of connectedness and love. There is no curse bigger than being alone. Loneliness is frightening. If you are connected, you are fearless. And we are the safest if we feel like a part of our global family. Where are the mothers of the children? They have been taken back. I am not a teacher or a preacher of compassion. I have made it a way of life. I truly believe that every solution lies in compassion in action. So, my dear friends, as we globalize markets, resources, and data, I urge you all to globalize compassion. Sangachadvam samvadadvam sambo manansi janatam deva bhagam yatha purve sanjananam upasate. हम चलेंगे साथ साथ चले हाथों में हाथ, हम चलेंगे साथ साथ एक दिन। ओ मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन। We shall overcome one day.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nobel laureate Kailesh Satyarthi.
Thank you. What an amazing galaxy of India's most shining stars, now shining and giving light to the whole world. I feel humbled and proud to be amongst you. I know that you are among the brightest minds serving the world and living here. But when I was entering in the university, I had a feeling that I am coming to a pilgrimage. You are the mine of Nobel laureates. So being the first Indian Nobel Peace Laureate born in India, that feeling was obvious for me to enter in Princeton University. Thank you for the organizers of this event. Dear sisters and brothers, such an august gathering reminds me the very first mantra of Vedas, Rig Veda. It says, Agni Mide Purohitam Yajjasva Deva Mrityujam Hotaram Ratna Dhatamam. The beauty of Vedic Sanskrit is that it has several meanings because the grammar is so rich. Every comma, every verb, and their permutations, combinations can create a beautiful meaning. So the simplest meaning of this mantra is that those who believe and engaged in the betterment of the humankind, the betterment of the world, come together, assemble at a place, ignite the fire of knowledge, the fire of humanity, the fire of compassion. And that fire is not just, the light and heat of that fire is not just for those who are assembled in yajna, what they call. Yajna means assembling together and offering your best for the cause of humanity. That is yajna, the literal meaning. So the knowledge, the compassion, the love, the humanity which you generate here in this hall should be the knowledge for all. And the last wordings, Hotaram Ratna Dhatamam. Let us convert that knowledge, the collective knowledge, the collective wisdom. Let us convert it into prosperity for all, shared prosperity. Ratna Dhatamam means prosperity. So conversion of knowledge into prosperity is not a new invention. It has always been there in the great text of Vedas. I hope that you are the guys who are doing it already, is it? I'm not very sure that you are converting that knowledge for the shared wealth for all, but we can definitely pray and hope so. When I say compassion, let me begin with my own story, my first spark of compassion. I was 5.5 years old, and that was my first day of school. I was born and grew up in a very modest family in a small town in central India. And my school was a very ordinary school. But I was told by my parents and my elder brothers that every child is supposed to go to school one day. So happily I was entering in my school, and right at the doorstep of that school, I saw a cobbler boy, my age. He was looking at our feet, not at us. He might be thinking that perhaps we can give him some job, shoe shining, but all of us were wearing new shoes. So I was a bit disappointed. The first question after my introduction I asked to my teacher in classroom that, "Sir, why a child is sitting outside the school gate and not with the rest of us in the classroom?" He looked a little bit strange and surprisingly, and he said, "Calm down, young boy, this is your first day, make new friends, be familiar with the school. And this is not uncommon," he said. "Poor children have to help the families and they work like that." What could I say as 5 years? I went back and I saw the boy still sitting under the scorching heat. Open sky, no umbrella, nothing on the roadside. I asked this to my mother and some other relatives who are educated people. Everybody has similar answers to convince me. But I was not convinced, because every morning and afternoon I was looking at that boy and I was feeling more and more disturbed and angry inside me, more pain. They say that they are poor children and they have to work. On the other hand, they have taught me that we are all children of the same God, Allah, Ishwar, whatever we call, Bhagwan. We are all equal. So one day I gathered all my courage and went straight to the boy, and sometimes his father, cobbler, used to sit alongside. So that day he was there. I asked the same question, but the boy was very shy. The man stood up with folded hands and told, "Babuji, मैंने तो कभी ये सोचा ही नहीं था. Sir, I never thought about it. Because my grandparents, my father and I started going to work since we were children, the same work, same job. And so is my son," he said. Then he took a pause, lowered his head. I could never forget his eyes filled with hopelessness, helplessness, utter miseries. And he told, "बाबूजी, स्कूल जाने के लिए तो आप लोग पैदा होते हैं, हम तो यही करने के लिए पैदा हुए हैं. Sir, you guys are born to go to school, but we are born to work." And I started crying. I could not understand that why some children are born to work at the cost of their education, their health, and more importantly, their freedom and their future. And that had given me a different perspective of life. Whatever the wise people say may not be right always. The learned people, my own mother. Because it could be a mental complacency. It goes on and on and on. And we made our comfort zones and we hide behind some ready-made answers of caste and community and nationalism and racism and gender and whatnot. And feel comfortable about it. And sometimes we take up weapons in our hands to fight against each other. But these are the ready-made answers which were created by those people for some reasons. But they still exist now, unfortunately. So is the human slavery. So is the casteism. I didn't know what was that. But it was so deep in my heart during my student life, university life. My parents, in fact, my father, who was a police constable and passed away when I was young. So my mother and I had to fulfill his dreams. Mother sold all her jewelry or whatever she has, ornaments. For my higher studies, I did my engineering and graduation and then specialized in high voltage transformer design. But I followed my heart, my passion. Considering that if one follows his or her heart, the mind will follow from the back one day. So I followed my heart. That was my choice and gave up my career. After earning some money in 1.5 to 2 years, lecturing in the university. Later on, the people said that it is the spark of compassion. I felt it like that. Because I had no desire to go to the heaven or wanted my salvation, my mukti or my moksha. That has never been my desire. I was not driven by money, career, fame, or anything else. But it was clear in my mind that I will make my own path because nobody was working on this issue of child slavery in my country or anywhere in the world. There was no single organization fighting against child slavery. There was no single study, research in the contemporary world. There were many studies of the past, medieval slavery and so on, but the contemporary slavery, there was nothing to learn from. So it was a tough battle against the mindset, mafia, vested interest, my own poverty. When I gave up my career, I was married, also with a 1-year-old child, and several attacks on me, my family, my friends. As MR just spoken, I lost 3 of my colleagues. But that was not me alone. Dear sisters and brothers, I always say that all the religions in the world were born out of compassion. When Jesus, Abraham, Muhammad, Buddha, Mahavir, Guru Nanak Dev, Krishna, Rama, when they felt so deeply the suffering of masses as their own suffering, they did not sit quiet. They took the first initiative. They wanted to alleviate that suffering, and the religion was born. And some of you may not be agree, but I firmly believe that all the revolutions in the world were born out of compassion. I've read about people like Mao Zedong and Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and Lenin and others, how deeply they felt the suffering of others. The spark, the seed was one. The deep connection with the exploitation and abuses and injustices and sufferings of others. The path was different. The approaches were different, which people like me can never be agree. Most of us should not be agree for the path of violence. But it is a truth. If we see good things happening in the world, during my last few days trip here, and I used to work across 140 countries, to be precise 144 countries in last 25, 30 years. And I'm always so overwhelmed meeting the people filled with compassion. They may not be knowing that they are compassionate leaders in their own areas, in their own walk of life, but they feel for others and they do whatever they can do. But for me, compassion is not a religious virtue or value. Sometimes, or many a times, people put mercy, pity, kindness, benevolence, charity, helpfulness, empathy, sympathy, and compassion in one single basket, which is not true. Rest of the things are really good human traits, human properties, soothing, making yourself happy and others happy. But compassion is the only power of social transformation. When the suffering is so deep-rooted, the problems are so deep-rooted in systems, in cultures, in institutions, like racial discrimination, like the gender inequality and discrimination, the casteism in my country, the deep-rooted historical bias of communal, or I would say communal bias. Even if you are kind and give some money, it's not going to solve the problem. We have to find some other way. So for me, compassion is not a tender or a soft emotion. It's a strong feeling that fills one with unprecedented energy and power that can change the world. When I say change the world, every other day or the week, we listen from people like the UN Secretary General, and he appointed me as one of those 17 Sustainable Development Goals advocates to see that how we can advance SDGs. 17 goals. Most of them are presidents or prime ministers, but he was kind to appoint me as well. But I have been saying it, that we have to discover more concrete, more sustainable way in advancing SDGs and solving those problems. He and others say, and we believe, it is true also, that world has never been so broken and divided as it is today. in spite of all these international institutions, UN institutions. But when we agree that world is broken, somewhere inside us we agree that essentially, originally, the world is one. If something is one, only then it could be broken. Why don't we go back to think that original idea of oneness, that world is one? Unfortunately, it is broken because of some reasons. But instead of talking and analyzing the problems all the time, of course, nothing is bad in it. But I wanted to see the culture of solutions in our ecosystem. Not just caught into the web of problems and trying to find out some conventional solutions and wisdom. And when we invent new terminology, new phrases, then we say that, no, this is the new idea. Why the world is so broken? When world has never been so wealthy, so resourceful, so knowledgeable, so fast as it is today. There is no dearth of constitutions and laws, international conventions and treaties and bindings. But what is happening now? The world is sharply divided in Russian-Ukrainian ongoing conflict, war. More sharply divided in Israeli-Palestine ongoing situation. UN Secretary General and others keep on pleading, making appeals, but who listens? I'll give you one example. On 7th of October, when this whole episode began last year, it was a shameful cruelty or crime against humanity when a terrorist group or extremist group, Hamas, has made several people, Israelis, captive. Nobody could support any kind of these things. No wise person can support. But I was talking to my colleagues, Anjali is sitting here and others, that the retaliation would be multiple times disastrous and dangerous. We have to do something. We have to raise this voice. As Nobel Peace Laureates, we cannot take and we should not take one side. That was my sense, that the problem is so deep-rooted historically and comes back in the minds of people and driven by the emotions and so on, and exaggerated, excavated by some vested interest in that all of us know. But I thought that why children in Gaza and Israeli children pay the price of it, why they suffer, why they are held captive, why they are maimed, why they are killed. Children, those who have never been responsible for any war in the history, for any conflict violence in the history, even for the poverty and injustices prevail in the history, they have never been responsible. So I picked up the phone and called some of my colleagues. One was one scientist, Nobel laureate from Israeli origin. And I said that we should come together and make a strong call that children should not be victimized. He was angry on me. He said, "What are you talking about, Kailesh? This is the decisive time. And I was shocked. He's a Nobel laureate, of course, not peace laureate. I said, let us think. I called up a couple of my colleagues, the peace laureates, coming from the Muslim world. One of them started crying in the middle of the night and said, Kailash, you are like my elder brother. And I was not hoping from you that you will be talking on behalf of Israeli children. Why don't you speak on behalf of the Palestinian children alone? I said, they are all our children. In any part of the world, if one single child is in danger, the world cannot call itself safe. So I said, just calm down, I will talk to you next day. I started talking to them the next day and next day. And I was collecting the phone numbers. I had phone numbers of many of my laureate friends. So I kept on making calls with a simple idea that let us agree on a basic, very simple thing that all Israeli children are our children, all Palestinian children are our children. Let us create some sense or some possibility that there could be some starting point. The children could be the starting point. So we should write that children are not responsible for war in Israel and Gaza, not for the history, but they are the worst victims and sufferers. And they should be saved at any cost, and other things. I tell you, dear sisters, friends, and brothers, within 10 days, 103 Nobel laureates from all disciplines, for all backgrounds and all religions, signed on that paper and supported and said that, Kailash, that is a good beginning, which my own people were never expecting. So what is needed? I was trying to challenge them that think of your own son, your own daughter, your own sister, brother, your own grandchild. If it is happening with him or her, what would you do? They started thinking that, yes, that was the beginning of a new discourse. Of course, we have sent out this letter to every single president and prime minister and kings and queen of the world, every head of the state. That was the power of compassion, the transformative power of compassion. I recall that when we planned to organize the worldwide march, the global march against child labor in 1998, with a simple demand to the international community that we need an international law, international convention to stop child slavery, child trafficking, child prostitution. Many of you might know that until that time there was no international convention or international legislation until 1999. So in 1998 we organized marches from 3 corners of the world. One from Sao Paulo, one from Manila, one from Cape Town. And the survivors from different countries participated in the march along with their chaperones and social workers in each leg of the march. We covered 80,000 kilometers, 50,000 miles distance in the 3, on the road, on the road. The villages, mountains, difficult terrains, forests everywhere. Difficult areas, Eritrea and Ethiopia, India and Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. We were walking on the road. But the power which has brought people and joined, and how many people you know? 15 million people signed up, those who physically joined. Millions more might have joined, but they have not signed. I'm talking about those who put their footprint on the pieces of paper, that they support the idea of this march. And that was my first call of globalizing compassion. Let us globalize compassion. I have been saying that we have globalized markets and economies and data and information. We have globalized problems, conflicts. We have globalized many solutions. But this is the time to globalize compassion. And compassion is not something that you have to borrow from a priest. You need not to go to a temple or a mosque or a church or a synagogue. Just sit quiet. Think of your own son and daughter. Think of your mother when you were a toddler. If you had any little problem, injury, illness, what was the response of your mother or your father or your close ones? And if something happens to your own son or daughter, what do? You will do every possible thing under your control. Compassion is biological reality, neurological reality. It is innate. We are born, each one of us is born with compassion. As Amar was saying, that me and my colleagues have physically liberated over 135,000 children through direct actions, and indirectly maybe millions globally. And we have felt, my activists, social workers, were driven by that core power of compassion. Even they made supreme sacrifice considering that if they were my children. Here in United Nations, I recall Devli, a girl whom we freed when she was 7 or 8 years old from intergenerational slavery. When I was driving her and many more children in my car, all of them were shocked to see the world. They have never imagined roads or buildings because they were born and grew up, their parents were born and grew up in stone quarries in a very remote area in Haryana state. I offered those children some bananas which were lying in the back. And the boys and girls, mumbling in each other's eyes, and asked to me eventually, then what is this? This is neither an onion nor a potato. They have never seen banana. But when this girl and many more children were brought to our ashram, we have 3 ashrams, 2 for boys and girls joint, 1 for girls and 1 for boys separately. So Devli is the name of that girl. She studied there for a few years. When she went back, I didn't know that what kind of conviction, some resolve she took with her. She went back home. After a few months, we learned that Devli has started up a new startup, which was 1,000,000 times powerful than any startup one can think of. A school under the tree. Whatever she has learned, alphabet, she started giving back to the society, to the community, making sure that no child is left out. Every child should learn whatever she could learn. And then she found a young man who volunteered to teach those 30 or more children in the village. Finally, school started running well. And Devli was chosen to speak at the General Assembly here. It was the time when MDG reviews were being finalized. So there was a big event called Class of 2015, chaired by then Prime Minister Gordon Brown of United Kingdom, and many other prime ministers, presidents, kings and queens, and other people were there, heads of various UN agencies, UNESCO, UNICEF, etc. So Devli stood upon the dais. She told her story, but she warned that I'm not talking about my sufferings. I'm talking about my conviction, my hope. I was born as a tribal girl, and I stood up with that. And I decided that no child should be left out. I have opened a school. And she questioned to the world leaders. Very simple question. That if I could do this much, what about you guys? She said that, why can't you bring every child to school and free them from mines and factories? I tell you, friends, that most of these leaders were in tears. And within 10 minutes, for the first time, they committed $450 million for the children of Africa, Latin America, and children in Asia through UNESCO. That money has gone to UNESCO for the education of children. It never happened before. That was the power of compassion of one child. It has tremendous transformation power. You are academicians, professors, teachers. You could be businessmen. Some of you might be businessmen, lawyers, government officers. Compassion is needed in your personal life. Self-compassion, not just self-love. When you are not trapped by self-obsession or not dragged by self-guilt, when you can know yourself, that is something which has to be practiced. And that can be practiced when you are involved in any activity of social transformation. That is my personal life experience for 4 decades or so, and the experience of thousands of people worked with me. We need compassion so that we get rid of the curse of loneliness, the curse of depression, the curse of anxiety, the curse of mental illness, which is spreading as a new epidemic in the world, and spending so much money in so-called counseling with counselors. This is a new business, and the antidepressant medicines and so on. Is my time over? I have 2-3 more minutes. Okay. So the big problem, or I would say the biggest problem people may say, it's the deficit in moral responsibility and deficit in moral accountability in all walks of life, in our social life. That deficit can be filled only through the genuine connections, the honest connections between the problem solvers and the sufferers of any problem in the world. That connection has to be human, genuine. When we live in the world of artificial intelligence, we should not forget the human component of intelligence in us. If we lose the human component of our intelligence, then the artificial intelligence will definitely become disastrous, uncontrollable. And so we talk of even more deeper, compassionate intelligence. And when I say connection, my simplest definition of compassion is selfless and mindful problem solving. If you go a little one further step, deeper, then compassion is the deepest connection with the suffering of others that compels one to take urgent action to alleviate that suffering. Nothing else. So, dear friends, I hope that every one of you wanted to solve the world's problem. And my humblest request is that just think that without that human connect, that connection which is needed in every sphere of life, politically, socially, diplomatically, personally, how can we solve such problems which are existing in the world? While thanking you, let us dare to imagine a compassionate world. I invite you to see what I see. I see compassionate governance, where the well-being, the betterment of the last person of society, as Gandhiji said, should be on the forefront in making policies, budgetary allocations, and enforcement. That should be the helm of our global governance and governance in the states. I see compassionate politics, where the politicians have a global outlook, not being confined to I am the best, my country is the best. That's true. You love your country and make it the best country in the world. But don't let others pushed back. Don't push them back. We have to learn how to walk together, how to talk together, and share each other's issues and solve them collectively. I see compassionate businesses where the wealth and prosperity created by those people with their hands and lands should have some share in it, and they should be appropriately compensated. I see compassionate communities where hatred and divide and bias and all kind of divisions are gone. Where in small communities, in schools, in colleges, in universities, in workplaces, in hospitals, in police stations, in judiciary, in business houses, in boardrooms, people can sit together in community and become each other's problem solvers. Where all religions celebrate oneness and their uniqueness hand in hand. Where each single temple, mosque, synagogue, church should be the safest heaven for any needy, desperate person. A child who is in danger can knock on the door of the nearest holy place, and the holy place will become holy place only when a Muslim child can knock on the door of a temple, and the temple priest say, "My child, come in, this is your safe heaven," or vice versa in any religions. Please join the movement. Join the movement. It is not for me. It is to think of a new world, a new culture of problem solving, a new humanity, a new civilization. And each one of you have that power. When I was standing on the Nobel dais receiving the Nobel Prize and gave my speech, I lost my papers, the written papers. And I remembered a story. A heavy fire broken out in jungle. All animals and birds were leaving jungle and rushing for a safer place, including King Lion. And Lion noticed a tiny hummingbird flying straight towards the flames. So surprisingly, he asked, "What are you doing, child?" She answered, "Lord, I was born and grew up here. I am going to extinguish this fire. I can't live without that. Shockingly, he asked, how come? The bird replied, sir, look at my beak. I am carrying a drop of water. I am doing my bit. I am doing my bit, she said. She flew, and the rest is the history. I am calling that bird inside you. I am trying to awaken that bird to make this world a better, safer, peaceful, sustainable place. And the bird is nothing but the compassion in you, and you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.